Hello, welcome to Two Movies Enter, One Movie Leaves. On this week's show, we're going to be having a bit of a Vietnam battle off between Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. Stick around and see which is the best war movie of all the war movies. War. War. What is it good for? Movies. That's what that film should have been. Song,
exactly.
Should have been. So yeah, as we were saying, this week's show it's going to be a battle between Full Metal Jacket and Platoon. We were originally going to go with Apocalypse Now and Platoon, I think, but I don't know. We have to try and figure out something. I think that's more similar to Full to Apocalypse Now. Yeah,
you always do it versus Heart of Darkness and just have a really long
drive ourselves insane watching all stuff about that for a week. But yeah, so this week two movies that came out fairly close to each other in the mid-80s about people's experiences in the Vietnam War. And we were talking about it the other night, the 80s for some reason was like, well, I suppose the Vietnam War was just after.
Exactly, it was fresh in everybody's minds.
So, but you had a lot of things, like for people who might be familiar with war movies, really, a lot of, before that, there was, I suppose, some war films that were seditious or kind of brought up the realities of war, but it was really only the Vietnam War kind of brought it home, I think, for a lot of people.
The horrors of war, exactly.
And that
the good guys are not always the good guys.
Because it was always like, say you had like maybe not John Wayne, but John Wayne wasn't more. He was a Green Beret, wasn't he, and stuff. Before that it was always like heroic deeds and stuff, and
we took out the enemies.
And Vietnam War, a lot of the films that are dealing with like PTSD had like people committing war crimes essentially over
civilian population being decimated, that kind of thing.
And the toll that it takes on the soldiers themselves. I think Platoon and Full Metal Jacket are really good examples of that for different kind of ways.
And I think they probably would have been the first generation of those, as you said, films that depicted the true horrors. Obviously, since then we've had like a lot of films that look at sort of the Iraq War, Afghanistan, all of that kind of stuff as well. So it just kind of paves the way for all of these.
Yeah, they definitely paved. And there were big budget
sort of
movies.
Soldier on the ground kind of thing.
Like, I mean, there was you'd have genre movies around war and stuff. And even things like
Saving Private Ryan, even I think was probably influenced to a large extent.
Oh God, definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. I think it's impossible for any war movie after both of those, and definitely the Apocalypse Now I think was so fucking weird. For the time, and probably captures what it was like.
Yeah, I suppose the kind of there's a lot of drugs being done by a lot of people as well, just to cope with daily fucking horrors of war kind of thing.
I think at the time when Apocalypse Now came out, it was so wild that people were probably, I don't know, I'd imagine a lot of people were probably, I don't know how to kind of handle it, because the Deer Hunter I think was out around the same, about a few years later maybe, but then you had stuff like Rambo, although around First Blood, brilliant. But like most of the 80s it was like war is good. It's just like when we're looking at Platoon, we were saying maybe it would have been better comparing Platoon to you said it about fucking Hot Shots.
Vietnam.
Oh no, you remember Hot Shots?
Yeah.
Because like Hot Shots I think kind of gets what was going on in the 80s, where it was like there was this thing where there was films like these two, and Hamburger Hill is another great war movie from around the same era as well.
Bloxy Blues.
Bloxy Blues, what the fuck? There was a TV series of the Nam, but like the Nam was there was the comic book, the Nam, which I meant to start read some. I downloaded all of them.
And probably forgot to read them.
For today. But I read them because I used to read them when I was younger. Punisher was really big in the 80s as well, and like there was a lot of stuff with the Punisher. Maybe it's in my fucking head, I'm getting it mixed up with the Nam, but kind of throwbacks to it. And Vietnam was everywhere. Like I was saying to you, and you thought it was a bit weird when I was a kid, like I was getting, like you'd get M16s, like plastic M16s to play with, or you get it was I can't remember. I think it was just called the Nam as well, or Nam. It was a magazine, a collectible magazine, and say kind of like in Ireland, like Playboy and all that shit was banned. But with this and they had like fold out kind of like things with guns.
Lovely. Oh, look at the body on that.
Or be like underground trenches with for where the Viet Cong used to, it was all, and it was really just fucking like overly glorifying. What was the thing? I don't think it's as much anymore. Maybe it is with computer games, but like toys, like in the 80s and the 70s and Jesus before that, like it was that divide there with boys and girls, but it was all war fucking toys.
Well, there wasn't like, I mean, that was the thing that used to piss me off. I used to get like given dolls and stuff like that, and I'm like, I want the bow and arrow, and I want the gun.
I'm not on about what people might have wanted, but I'm on about, that it's like now I think there's more variety, and people are like, oh, maybe we get them like a carpenter set or
that's true. Yeah, different kinds of tools.
Yeah, we get these
tools
instead of
like, killing.
yeah, let's get guns. Let's teach these kids how to kill.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's getting straight into. We go through the plot for both of them on our scoreboard thing. The first one up is plot. So I suppose we'll go with Platoon first, because I think Full Metal Jacket is a bit more. I don't know. We'll get into that.
I think Full Metal Jacket is a tale of two halves, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Platoon.
Well, I mean, story arc and plausibility. It's more or less based on Stone's own experience in the military and in the Vietnam War, so it has to be plausible. The story arc has to be there.
Yeah, but just with the plot, like we're just saying what the plot is, because what if people are listening and they don't know what Platoon or Full Metal Jacket is?
Well, why don't you explain it then?
No, I was opening the way for you to do it, but I'll do it. Bloody women! If only you were given guns as kids, this wouldn't happen. But it's the plot of Platoon is, like you were saying, it follows Oliver Stone's journey through in a platoon in Vietnam in I can't even remember the year that it was meant to be set in. I think it was the late 60s. But yeah, it's
I suppose he's a bit more idealistic, and he's sort of, and he's kind of
he wasn't part of the draft. He chose, so he dropped out of college to go there, which from what I read the book when it actually came out, just before the movie. Oh, and we were trying to figure out what age I would have been at that stage, and it was like 7. Something, and it was like, this is as well how it was like.
Instead of reading, like, I don't know, The Magic Faraway Tree by Enid Blyton, you're like, I'll just read about this soldier's harrowing experience.
But it would have been just like, oh, cool, another war book. And so it's following his experience in it, told as well through, I suppose, the thing, I think both of the films are about the duality of man, as Joker says in Full Metal Jacket, but I think it's a little bit more obvious in Platoon, whereas in Platoon, there's two kind of sergeants or lieutenants, I don't know, military structure.
De facto leaders of the platoon,
Willem Dafoe plays Elias, which is like the good guy, even though they're all killers.
They are, but he's slightly more compassionate.
Yeah, he still retains some of his humanity, whereas Tom Berenger plays... what was his name? Hold on, we're going to have to...
Brooks? No, Burke? No, not Burke.
Burke was the...
Barnes. I know it was a B name.
Barnes,
Jesus.
Barnes, who's basically hell. He's got like scars all over his face. He's just like
seen too much war and killing.
So he's more. There's no humanity. It's very much.
He doesn't see the enemy as humans.
Cost.
Yeah, it's just they are just the enemy, and they are to be exterminated.
And as well, you see that like Elias generally loves his men or the people that he's in the company with, whereas Barnes, although it looks like he's the one to follow because he'll protect you, it's very clear that he will, if he thinks that you
are expendable, basically.
You're of no use. That's all it is. He just thinks about the numbers, and it's not the individual with it. So it's pretty much that, like Charlie Sheen's character or Oliver Stone gets caught between the two of those, and it's given that story, and it's all set over probably a couple of months, but it's really set over like 2 or 3 days of things happening. With it, so it's following the platoon being ambushed and the disintegration of the platoon, and then a civil war between the platoon on both sides and the outcome of that. And
So yeah, so I suppose that's the plot of Platoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full Metal Jacket.
Well, Full Metal Jacket, I suppose, again, as I said, it's kind of a tale of two halves because she's in almost the first full hour in training camp on the island or whatever you want to call it, where they're going through their basic training to become Marines. And they have, why does his name escape me there now? All of a sudden, they're drill sergeant, drill captain.
Arlie Emmy. Emery?
Oh, fucking
Army.
What's his name though? And oh my god! But anyway, he's their drill sergeant.
Hartman.
What?
Hartman,
is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's Hartman, and obviously he's sort of a really hard-ass, old-fashioned drill sergeant where he's going to break these recruits down and build them back up to be not just men, but killing machines. And you can see them kind of going through their training. The film opens, obviously, with just them getting their hair shaved off, which kind of shows you, right, okay, you're all being turned into the same killing machine now. And I suppose sort of how different recruits cope with it. One of them doesn't cope too well with all the bullying and all the, sort of the hard-assness and has basically a mental breakdown. And then that's sort of the end of the first kind of story arc. And then it's over to Vietnam. It's out in country and we're seeing him, sort of getting caught up in action, I suppose. Really. Yeah.
It's an exploration of a couple of missions, I suppose, or encounters. That
and again,
at the end of the Vietnam War as well.
Yeah, and again, they have that whole thing, as you said, duality, man. It's the Joker, I suppose, is he's a writer for the Stars and Stripes newspaper, and it's sort of showing you the kind of the disconnect between what they're trying to report and the reality, what's happening. They put spin on everything. So it's like, if there's an attack happens, we have to say we have killed some of the enemy. Like we have to give people their feel good story, make them think it's all worthwhile.
Well, that's it, and it's about people trying to retain their morals, and I think showing what Vietnam, or well, not Vietnam, it's not like you go on holidays to Vietnam and you turn into a killer, but like what the war did to people. Some people were suited to it, some people were just killers. They were natural born killers. That's what a Joker has written on his helmet, is born to kill. And the whole thing, the famous where he has the peace symbol as well on his jacket, and like one of the colonels is, "Why are you wearing that, boy?" And he's like, "Oh, show the duality of men, Jungian concept." Where it is that, but I think that's the whole thing about Joker. Oh, we get into it when we're talking about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about sort of the plot now, in fairness. But yeah, so that's, I suppose, the plot of the two. One is following a specific platoon dealing with the horrors of war. The other, as I said, it's still following specific people within it, but it's sort of it's the journey, seeing the people as they come in, the kind of almost dehumanising training they go through, and then on the other side over in Vietnam what they go through as well. Yeah,
for me, I think Full Metal Jacket is better plot wise, and story arc and plausibility. I think the story arc with Full Metal Jacket is better. In Platoon, Charlie Sheen does change, but he doesn't really at the same point. There's people just kind of die in Platoon.
Yeah.
Whereas in Full Metal Jacket, it raises more questions, I think, with it. Now, both of them are incredibly plausible, I think.
Oh,
and both of them are very, so I think you'd have to give it, there's not one that's kind of more realistic than the other.
But I think Full Metal Jacket tells a more complete story, I think.
Yeah.
It's from the start to almost the finish of a young recruit's life, kind of a thing, following it through from sort of the wide-eyed fucking boy coming into the army to the sort of the hardened cynic at the end. And
it does, and I think Platoon is more action-packed and a bit more visceral with some of the things. It's Full Metal Jacket, I think, probably captures it better, where it doesn't, like one death in Full Metal Jacket has a lot more impact than...
It's a lot more powerful, I think it is. You do see the people who are being killed as humans. You see the person behind the body getting shot or whatever. I think they take the time to paint a fuller picture, maybe. And
as well, it kind of shows, like we get into it later on, but Full Metal Jacket, I think, does a better job of showing the other side of things. Is what I don't know. For me, at Full Metal Jacket, it's what it is. It's a longer period of time as well, but I think it's just done better. I think the plot is better. There is more said with it, and they're both around the same length of time.
I suppose, yeah. And in fairness, like again, the sort of the rewatchability and all the rest. I'd sit down again tomorrow and watch Full Metal Jacket, whereas I necessarily wouldn't with Platoon.
No, Platoon as well. It's not as brutal as I remember it being. But like maybe that's me just after going
After watching
desensitized.
terrible horror films, where people get their heads ripped off.
But so I suppose plot-wise, going to give it Full Metal Jacket. Yeah, entertainment value and rewatchability.
Well, I've literally just said I would happily rewatch Full Metal Jacket again tonight, even after I only haven't watched it during the week. Whereas Platoon, I'd have to gear back up for it again.
Well, I think with Full Metal Jacket, it does some really clever stuff with it. Like, I'm not a big Kubrick fan, but then sometimes I look at a lot of the movies that he's made, and the movies I really like. So you go, well, maybe there is a lot to be said about him.
Of course there is.
But like Kubrick, it's a very funny movie. And there's a whole thing with the drill instructor character as well, where part of him and part of what they used to do was use humour when they were breaking people down. So they kind of make people complicit in the whole thing, and they feel as if
the camaraderie is building up there,
and the camaraderie with the drill instructor, where they think, oh well, we can put up with all this shit if we can like put up with and we get like a funny joke at the end of it, and we get this and we get that, and we're part of it, and then like being part of training things, obviously not fucking
for Vietnam,
but like say week long or 2 week, well actually a 2 week long training thing before, where it was a physical thing, and there was aspects of that, like because it was in a healthcare environment, you wouldn't have someone up in your face fucking calling you a cocksucker.
Well,
but what you kind of had, like,
and the sort of the mental health settings that you're in.
Well, we did because we had to fight. We had to like actual fights with it at the end of it, and a few different bits and pieces.
Not with patients.
No, in the training. Imagine I was like, over there, you stomped that patient to death. What? He's got a cough.
Joined up for.
But Full Metal Jacket, and it's a testament to the cast as well. Like, I mean, the cast in Platoon is amazing. There's a lot of people that were in Platoon. Johnny Depp is in it, but very briefly. Forrest Whitaker. I love Forrest Whitaker and things. He's not in enough things at all anymore. Ghost Dog Way the Samurai. We're going to have to try and figure out how to do that. That's fucking amazing movie, and no one talks about it.
Yeah.
And it's just it's hip hop samurai fucking gangster movie, and it's hilarious. Like that's one of the things for people who haven't fucking ever heard of it. Go and look at it. It's just so funny that there's like old mobsters in it, with Forrest Whitaker playing this hitman who's like into hip hop and who thinks of himself as being a samurai. It's fucking amazing. And it's very funny as well. But that's in Full Metal Jacket. It's funny. Platoon. Not many laughs in Platoon.
No, and that's the thing. They don't tend to get into sort of the like what I would imagine it was really like. I suppose insofar as like the humour in Full Metal Jacket, even at home base and out in Vietnam, out back country, or whatever way you want to put it, seeing the action. There's an awful lot of just like sitting around bonding because you're bored, because there's nothing going on, and there's sort of you're all in it together kind of thing, and there's no like I mean something I even said to you, you see the toilets when they're laid out at the base, it's like there's just row upon row of toilets in the room, and not only is there a toilet beside you with absolutely no partition, there's a toilet directly in front of you, so you're sitting beside a man and in front of a man taking a shit, so there's no privacy, there's no sense of that kind of thing. I think it just portrays that a little better with the humour, where people are around just sitting shooting the shit and fucking one-upping each other with like wisecracks and stuff like that.
Well, I think it's what Full Metal Jacket did extremely well was capturing the different, or maybe like the difference between the time settings as well, with the training kind of aspect of it, whereas like the old training thing and back in America at the start of it or near the end of it, there was still this very conservative thing, and it was like, even it starts off, I think it's like a country music song, it starts off, and then when they're in Vietnam it's more modern music, even though it's like only a month or 2 months since like it passed, but it's trying to I think it just captures that thing that the military, it's still caught, its training is still based on the way that they probably trained a lot of people for World War II or going back beyond that even, and then kind of when they get over it, like there's a line in it where like Hartman says to him, we don't train robots, or the Marines don't want robots, we want killers. And that is very much a thing where it's like they work as a team, and when they're in the thing, so they get that basic army kind of thing, but then when they're left loose, they're fucking just a bunch of individual killers. that are working as a team. You know, it's that modern aspect of war, which comes into it. So I don't know where I'm going with it.
No, neither do I actually. But entertainment value.
But entertainment value. Whereas I think with Platoon, it just captures the modern aspect of it. You don't. Or not that you, but you know, the 60s, very 60s aspect of it, where it's kind of like nearly cool with the music and when they're doing drugs and so.
Doing drugs.
Yeah.
My God, you sound like your granddad.
Yeah, well, you know, there's that split in it as well, where it's like, it's very, not basic, but it's nearly kind of a cliched split where they have these guys from the south that are staying in their barracks just drinking, and they're like all the potheads, which are all the like African Americans and the kind of the hippies over in the other, you know, and that's like the division between Barnes and Elias with it as well. So it's like nearly the hippie movement versus that, where it's just very on the nose, whereas I think it's a lot more subtler in Full Metal Jacket. So yeah, entertainment value. Yeah, I think Full Metal Jacket is far more entertaining. Yes, getting really away from. And as well, it's shot fucking stunningly. So, you know, there's a lot of bits that you could just look at over and over again. Like, and bizarrely, I didn't realise it was all shot in England.
Was it?
Yeah.
What? Even the bits where they're in like the actual city in Vietnam.
Yeah, they turned an old ironworks factory, I think, or an ironworks thing that was after collapsing into all that. He shipped in. I can't remember what the palm trees or whatever the fuck they were. They got fake ones in from Hollywood, and he thought that they were crap, and Kubrick was like, send them back. And they got, I think the film cost around 30 million at the time, or maybe more, which would have been an awful lot in the 80s, especially for a movie like that. But it was Stanley Kubrick, so he had
people
such a name.
Such a clout, I suppose, really,
Yeah, so Full Metal Jacket for entertainment value and rewatchability. Whereas you would think it'd be Platoon, because Platoon is more action packed. But I don't know, the action in it is a bit messy.
Well, I suppose, like, in fairness as well, like, I mean, obviously I've seen both these films a number of times before, but I Full Metal Jacket had my full undivided attention this time around, whereas Platoon, you know the way people just get pulled away and they're like, oh, I must check my emails or whatever. I pulled away a little bit, whereas I didn't pull away in Full Metal Jacket, so I do think just the entertainment value is there.
Platoon, it's that thing about having the grimness, and Platoon is just grim the whole way through it. And even when they're having a good time, I don't know, it's a bit seedy as well and stuff. Whereas, like, not saying in Full Metal Jacket when they're with prostitutes, it's wholesome, but there's. Well,
it is actually. It's even. I do think it's handled better, because obviously you have the famous like "me so horny, we love you long time," but it's, you know, it's sort of your kind of. Even that scene is very humanising, like, you know, you can see that it starts off with the Vietnamese lady swaggering up and, like, you know, doing her little dance and all the rest, and haggling for her body, basically, how much it's going to cost, but they're not treating her like a piece of meat either as well, you know, they're kind of having a bit of banter with her and all the rest, and, you know, chatting back, and it just seems a lot more, less seedy, as you said, and just a little bit more human interactions kind of a thing.
Seems more realistic, I think, because it's like I've been in.
And it kind of gives her more agency, because she's the one approaching them as such. Like, you know, it's not like a lot of war films where it's just like horrible and like rapey and horrible and icky. And
but that's the thing, like there's a lot of rape, and there's rape in like fucking Platoon, and I think Platoon portrays a lot of it. Makes out that like it's only like, say, Charlie Sheen and a couple of other soldiers that have like moral,
any kind of redeeming quality.
Whereas like the truth of the matter is they're all killers. So if you're going to go on a moral high ground, it's like, well, they're all bad people, but it's like just different levels of badness. But it's in Platoon, it's that where like that is a side effect, or not Platoon, in Full Metal Jacket, that's an aspect that they have to take it. That's part of their to live, to survive. They have to be like that, but they don't really cover that in Platoon. In Platoon, it's just you got like the good people against the bad people, and the thing that the bad people are like nearly caricatures. Where you got like Bunny, who's like, oh, I want to be here because I want to kill people, and he's off raping children and smashing people's heads open and killing old people, you know, and he's getting a kick out of it. When they cover in Full Metal Jacket, there's people that are there saying, I really want to be here, I belong here because I'm a killer or whatever. Well, they don't say, but like your man, he's the platoon leader at the start, where he's there with the dead body going, oh, when we get back, we're going to miss these Viet Cong people because these people are worth killing. There'll be no one worth killing when we get back.
But yeah, like, I mean, I know Platoon doesn't flinch away from, like, the grim realities of war and stuff like that. So I suppose, as you said, just as regards the theme, like, sort of the whole kind of identity and the depth, it is a grim portrayal of probably what a lot of war is like, where you do have all these horrible events happen and all the rest.
Oh, I didn't even go on to that bit yet. I was only talking about the entertainment values.
All right, okay.
But I suppose, actually...
we're giving it to Full Metal Jacket. We may as well move on to the next bit.
It's, for the next one is team with the identity of it. And I think the theme of Platoon is... I think the tagline on it was like, the first casualty of war is innocence. So it is like the loss of innocence. It's Charlie Sheen going out there with all these fucking high notions of, I want to serve, I want to do this and do that, and then he's faced with the actual reality of and then it's who is the enemy as well. Like, are there enemies on your own side? And
willing to, like, stab you in the back, basically.
And it's like, what do you have to become to survive here? Where, like, there's people saying to it, look, it's not about fucking idealism when you're here, it's about just fucking get to the end of the day, survive,
and get back home as well. I mean, there's the whole thing about, like, fucking, okay, I've been injured twice, I can finally go back home, kind of a thing,
And so, like, I think Platoon's it's innocence, but I think there's a similar theme in Full Metal Jacket, but Full Metal Jacket cover a larger aspect of, like, what happens to people going through the whole process of it, like, that they go in, and it's not only that people go in and lose their innocence, they lose their fucking mind, they lose their soul nearly. It's like a descent into hell.
And I suppose it does question as well, I suppose, the whole thing of, like, okay, some, like, you get maybe 90% of people can survive that hole being broken down and built up again to become stronger, better, faster, whatever. But then what about the people?
That's our dog chasing after his tail.
He's just decided to lose his mind there just as we speak about it. But then
hit him with a bar of soap, Laura.
Obviously then you have these people who go in and they just can't cope with it, and rightly so as well. It's very dehumanising, all the rest, and just the effect it takes on people, and sort of personal mental toll, to the extent that, well, I'm living in hell, so I'm just going to take myself out of here by killing myself.
Well, that's the thing, Pyle in it, he's quite obviously meant to represent childhood. I think he's a childish character. Vincent D'Onofrio fucking plays him amazingly, because you do kind of go, this guy has special needs, or he's very childish, and I think he's meant to represent, because when you see Joker train them up or trying to train him, it's like someone teaching a child.
It is. It's like it's an older brother helping him tie his shoelaces and button his fucking
and
shirt.
he mimics that as well. So you can watch him going through it, and it is that whole aspect. It's only when the drill instructor gives up and says, right, every time he fails,
you get punished.
And then when they get to they punish him big time, where they attack him with and it's Joker's attack on him, which that is the thing that makes him snap. And it's like when he's crying in the bed, it's not like, oh, you motherfuckers, I get you. It's a child crying.
It is. It's like Thurman Merman.
Because he's just like, ow, which it's just like it's so like the first few times you look at it, I don't think it all sinks in with that part of Vincent D'Onofrio, and then kind of when he just
you can talk about him in the action, I suppose.
When he descends into madness.
It's so terrifying.
For people who might be familiar, I suppose people would be more familiar with him. He plays the Kingpin in all the Marvel stuff. And I don't think you could have a fucking better choice for the Kingpin in it. But I think the versatility that this man has in his acting, very, very underrated over his career. But like fucking stellar performance. But when he goes mad, just that change in his eyes.
It is incredibly tense and suspenseful and very disturbing as well, because it's the weird smile, it's the way he's and it's the tense music, it's everything really. You're like, Jesus, I don't know what way this goes.
And he's ascendant, and he becomes what Hartman was trying to get him to become. He becomes a soldier, becomes a killing machine. So he turns him into a killer
sniper, basically.
And he's someone that they can't train or break. He's very, whatever his values or whatever kind of person he is, just it cannot change. He gets broken and turns into a killer as a result of being broken. Not like the rest of them. They're trained to be killers, and they take on those traits, or maybe they're killers already, but like he's just they destroy him, and then as a result he kills the trainer or killers
and
kills himself.
But yeah, like I mean, that I suppose that's a good, I suppose, synopsis of the theme. There is like the loss of innocence, the loss of childhood. Again, they're both kind of on that. Like I mean, Platoon is kind of the same, but to a certain extent, I think is a little bit more. It is about like how far will you go in war if you've no restrictions put on you. Like most people have a moral code they live by because they're. You know, you kind of, there's repercussions, whereas out here in the middle of war zone, there's no repercussions if you decide you're going to like gang rape a fucking teenager or kill an old woman or whatever in a village. There isn't even the repercussions if you suddenly decide, oh well, my friend's going to fucking testify me.
I'm going to kill him.
Yeah, I'm going to kill him, and that's it. Like, you know, it's there's. You know, sort of no rules, it's anarchy kind of thing.
But it's that duality thing that they're really fixated on, I think, in Platoon more so than in Full Metal Jacket. In Full Metal Jacket, I don't think they bring morality into it as much, which I think that's the thing in war. It's just about people trying to get by, or what happens to people as a result of being in these places, or, you know. So it is like a descent into it, even at the very end, because Joker, I think, is like the weird moral centre for the movie the whole way through, where you think he's looking at things kind of going, I don't agree with this and I don't. But at the same point, when they meet Animal Mother has like, I've become Death Destroyer Worlds on his helmet, and Joker has like a Natural Born Killer, or no, Born to Kill, sorry, written on. They're the only two that have stuff written on their helmets. So I think that like Mother Animal is like Joker further down, or could be Joker further down, and Joker ends up like becoming him near the end, but he's given where they have like the sniper, and that's where like properly descends into hell, because it goes from these kind of sterile kind of imagery when they're in training, and it's all very sterile and clean, so maybe nearly like either heaven or it could be purgatory, and then as they progress on to it gets dirtier and shabbier, and then at the end it's just fire and red,
fire and smoke and confusion,
and it's like they're after descending into fucking hell. So he ends up killing the sniper as a mercy act, but by killing that person he turns into he's like born to kill. He becomes a killer, and then his whole thing is, I'm no longer afraid. So he turns into, it's even the most
become Death Destroyer,
the most moral out of the whole lot, and changes at the end. I think it just shows all of them walking along, singing the fucking Mickey Mouse thing, or the Mickey Mouse Club thing, where it's like, it's, I don't know, it's like these childish kind of things, but so it's like an army of children in hell. They're like hell soldiers or something, and they're just like fearless going through it. So I think that shows, like, you know, that there's more of a bigger team or question in what like the military does, or what these, but it doesn't say like it's wrong or right. It's just like, this is the nature of war, whereas Platoon, I think it is more moralistic and set on kind of like, you know, people rather than the military kind of structure. So
what are you going to say is winning then?
I'd give it Full Metal Jacket.
poor Platoon. And Platoon is stellar anyway as well, but it's just so far Full Metal Jacket.
But you know, the thing is, I think Platoon won Oscars. I'm just going to stick with me for a second and we'll just look and see if Platoon won Oscars, because I'm fairly sure it did. Academy Award, won a fucking ton of awards. Best Picture, Best Director. Nominated
editing, sound, editing, best director. Well, these are all BAFTAs as well.
And I don't think Full Metal Jacket won awards when it came out. Or it definitely didn't. So accolades, Academy Awards, it only got nominated. Whereas I do think, like, I mean, this is like what we say in every week. Platoon is a great film. They're both good films.
It just comes down to maybe which is the better resonates film. With us, like, I suppose, a bit better. So like, if you're giving it to Full Metal Jacket, I suppose we're 3 up so far now.
Would you get Full Metal Jacket too? Yes. Right, so acting, characters, and performance.
Go back, you were talking about Vincent D'Onofrio there, so go back and actually talk about him there now.
Yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio is just fucking fantastic in it. Like, he plays like from a child to a
competent clinical killer.
And it's just his look, and then when he does kind of gather or he realizes what he's after doing with killing Hartman, and Joker is there, like, kind of like, you know, Leonard,
take it easy,
and he's like, my world. He's like, we can get out of this shit, and he's like, my world is shit. I am, you know, the things aren't going to get any better. It's just he's in hell already. Whereas like it took the rest of them a little bit longer to to go to hell, you know, with it. But he's Matthew Modine. Well, it is Matthew Modine.
Matthew Modine,
Yeah. He has an audio book and a book about like the Full Metal Jacket diaries. He's after I must get it on Audible at some stage. But he's brilliant. It's very understated. I think this is the thing, whereas there's more, I think, opportunities in Platoon to be less sterile or kind of
maybe to have
more melodramatic, with it. So I can see why that would have won things and get to people a bit more, because it's Kubrick's way as well. Kubrick's films, they're normally a bit sterile.
Well, I think on the whole though, like, I mean, the actual acting from and performance from people in Platoon, even though so far Full Metal Jacket is winning out, I do think there's probably more on show there. There's probably more showmanship and stuff like that. There's probably a lot more to explore. I mean, you've got Charlie Sheen kind of as a sort of the horrified kind of almost narrator of the whole thing. You know, you've got Willem Dafoe, and you've got all these people sort of act as I think it's, as a character study, I actually think Platoon is better. I do, because there's just so many deeper explorations of the characters, and so I know they're sometimes maybe just a little bit one dimensional. It's like, oh well, he's the bad guy because he's doing this.
I think because of Platoon really opened up the cliches for people, and as well because Platoon was so popular. Like I remember really, it's even in Preacher, like in Preacher where it goes back with Jesse Custer's father being a Marine, and there's that whole conflict in the thing, and as well he fucking with people in the platoon killing other people, and you know, it's nearly a rip off of Platoon to a certain extent, but that popped up in an awful lot of things going forward with it, but I think there's a thing with Fulham. Well, it's about the acting, and I don't know. I think because really Vincent put like Orly Army.
He is fantastic, in fairness, but I would say they're the two standout characters of Full Metal Jacket, whereas I think in Platoon there's a lot of really diverse, interesting characters, and I think everyone kind of plays up to their strengths really. Like, I mean, you know, Forrest Whitaker is sort of, you know, there's just so many different character actors, and I think they all get a chance to develop, whereas you are kind of, there's a few kind of, I suppose, supporting characters in Full Metal Jacket, but I don't think they're given as much free reign, and I don't think that there's a lot of scenery too, and of course in Platoon, but I mean, I think it's warranted for the type of film it is. It's fucking it's war.
Well, it's what Platoon was famous for at the time, and then nearly every movie copied after that was that they went off like being trained by, was it Dick Dale or one of those guys who was an ex-Marine, and it was like this whole Tropic Thunder famously took the piss. That's where Tropic Thunder came from, where it was like people, I think with Ben Stiller overheard these actors talking about kind of like how like the training that they did was one of the most traumatic things they ever did, and they were comparing it to being in war.
Well, and I was like, you're an actor.
So that's where it started with these people in Platoon, where they were like trained to be like real soldiers and stuff, but I don't know. But yeah, I suppose give it to Platoon. I agree with you on that. I do think though, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Absolutely, I think if you're comparing maybe
better than anyone in
two
Platoon.
Central characters, like say on that side, I know Joker is probably the one we're following through by. As I said, you have the drill sergeant and you have Vincent D'Onofrio. They would probably win any acting category. But I think overall there are more good actors in the
and as well, Orly Army was on as a consultant with it at first, and they were, I can't remember who they were meant to take on, or I think it was Ed Harris was meant to be, and he said no, he didn't want to do it, and Orly Army asked if he could audition for it, and Stanley Kubrick didn't really want him to do it because he didn't think he'd be...
No, you're not an official actor.
Yeah, and he wouldn't be nasty enough to do it, and then, like, most of it's ad-libbed. I think it's
and it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it is. I think
it's horribly offensive, but it's hilarious in its delivery as well.
For people not familiar with Kubrick, he'd be famous for reshooting scenes over and over and over again to the point of driving people insane. And apparently, you know, the first bit with the drill instructor, it goes over maybe about 20 minutes, I think, at the start. That took like 10 hours to shoot. So it was 10 hours of him insulting people and shouting. A lot of it ad-libbed. So, like, it's very close on it. But yeah, with dialogue, with the storytelling and the context.
Well, I mean, you've just been talking about Army there, like dialogue alone for him.
It's hilarious. Like
the patter is just fucking bananas.
Yeah, it's realistic.
It is, and it kind of, I think, as you said, it harks back to the sort of maybe this 50s sensibility of it's like, it's God, it's country, it's, you know, all of this. And he's very Christian. He's like, you know, singing Jesus, happy birthday and all the rest. And like how dare, like, he doesn't understand that other religions don't necessarily worship the Virgin Mary kind of a thing, you know. So it's I think the dialogue is absolutely hilarious. It's horrendously offensive, obviously, you know.
Even with that, it's catching this thing about like who people were before and trying to hold on to some form of identity with them, where it's like, if you're Christian, like one of the main things of Christianity is thou shalt not kill.
Yeah.
There's no
turn the other cheek.
Yeah, there's no thing in it where it's like, oh, thou shalt not kill, unless it's like, thou shalt not kill. That's fucking it. So these are all killers.
Yeah.
So it's like there's that. But it's I think, and the storytelling, I think, in Full Metal Jacket is excellent. Not that it's not in Platoon, like Platoon is far from
like, I mean, I like the whole, like, I mean, you have Charlie Sheen kind of doing the narration and kind of looking back, and it's sort of it's like a horrific The Wonder Years kind of a thing, where it's just like, you know, oh, I remember the day where I went into
letters
a village
to grandma, and it's, you can't really say is he an unreliable narrator or anything like that, whereas I think if it was like nearly flashbacks, I don't know, it could have been done in a weird way, and there was a lot of people said as well afterwards with Oliver Stone saying that maybe a lot of it was made up and it was a load of shit. Because
that's the thing, a lot of it would be portraying Charlie Sheen's character in a very positive light, and like, you know, kind of like grandiose notions of like how good and how, like, you know, well, I'm sort of a soldier of good kind of a thing, and I'm an honourable,
and as well he goes from being absolutely useless to all of a sudden at the end he's running around like fucking Barnes or Elias shooting fucking dozens of people, whereas in fucking Full Metal Jacket I think it's handled a little bit more realistically, where they have a hard time killing one person, and even like there was a whole thing when they get into attacks, they kill like 2 or 3 people out of, like, you know, it's
a bit more realistic, I suppose, the actual
and that deals more with like urban warfare when it gets to the warfare thing, which the other thing is more in the jungle, it doesn't cover as wide of a action, but the dialogue I think is better in Full Metal Jacket without
but there's more quotable fucking that's what I nearly it's terrible, but I do kind of measure a film on that as regards dialogue, and as I said, there's all the, you know, me so honey, and there's like so many like quotes from the drill sergeant.
Fear Factory ended up using the this is my rifle. There are many others, like, you know, for it was on Soul of the New Machine, I can't remember the song's name. But yeah, there's loads of it. It's just
so cool. Yeah, that's it. There's so many standout moments of that whole thing, you know. And even like, I mean, you know, sort of kind of putting on the, oh, you're going to impersonate John Wayne and put on the John Wayne swagger, and it's you know, it's kind of very smartly self-referential, I suppose, or referential back to sort of harkening back to historical war films as well, you know.
That's I can't remember any dialogue from Platoon.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's
you see his head explode.
But it's all so memorable, I think, from Full Metal Jacket.
So yeah, Full Metal Jacket gets on the dialogue. Cinematography.
Now, kind of hard, I suppose, because Platoon is quite good. There's quite a lot of, as I said, a lot of action there, but I actually, again, this is going to sound terrible, I'm going to be going to Full Metal Jacket straight from the outset.
Oh yeah, hands
just
down.
Because, I mean, the snap from, I suppose, as I said, Gomer Pyle, you know, is a sort of, you know, kind of childlike thing. And when he goes into the toilets then, and it is incredibly unsettling, uncomfortable. It's just, you know, this dark fucking toilet kind of horrible thing. And somebody, you know, that's the end of their life basically, in this horrible sterile toilet. Then back in, I suppose, if we go towards the end of it as well, when we're in the sort of the broken down city, crumbling kind of ruins and all the rest, as I said, it's like a depiction of hell. It's just, everything is on fire. There's smoke everywhere. There's people are getting shot. It's full of confusion, but it's established really well. It's not confusing to watch. It is confusing. Like, where, oh my God, where are they shooting from? Where's the sniper? Where do we go next, kind of thing. But and it gets that frantic.
It's even, the sniper isn't represented as being like this demonic entity.
Yeah.
The sniper is another one of them, the sniper is saying her prayers when they shoot her and when she's dying and stuff. So they're all in fucking hell together. Whereas in Platoon have a similar bit at the end, but it's like more, it's like they're being overrun by fucking hundreds of soldiers and it's chaos running around the dark jungle, and then they call in an airstrike on their own men, which goes overhead, and then like there's the fire, but it's very little, like Barnes is like the devil, where he's like over Charlie Sheen, and the flames behind him, where it's a little bit.
That I think is a little bit more subtle maybe in Platoon, in Full Metal Jacket, I should say. But I do like, I mean, honestly, there are some scenes towards the end of Full Metal Jacket where you are kind of like, Jesus, this could be like a screen print on a wall kind of a thing, you know, not necessarily a lovely, beautiful one or anything like that, more a bit like Guernica or something. But
as well with the ending of Full Metal, if you didn't have them singing the Mickey Mouse song, and it was just that you could have, say, the Platoon music, go playing over that and be like, you know, very kind of, but like when it finishes with them singing the Mickey Mouse, it's just like, what the fuck is going on here?
It's kind of uplifting because everybody knows the Mickey Mouse gang song, but it's so creepy as well because they're all just marching in unison singing this song, and it's so, again, it's very unsettling.
And the whole thing where it's like, I am no longer afraid. So it's like this uplifting where it's like he's a killer. That's it. He's not afraid to kill them. But it's just the cinematography, I think, is so much better. It is, and it's even sort of, its temperature changes in the colour as well. Like, I mean, we're back in training, it's cold, it's kind of grey, it's, you know, even the outdoor weather is just cold and miserable and wet and sort of sterile. Then you go to this sort of like absolute buzzing city over in Vietnam, and it has this sort of that kind of warmth that you have in sort of those kind of settings, you know, sort of you can feel the heat, you can feel it, everything has this sort of orangey kind of brown glow. And knowing that it was shot in England.
Yeah, it's like, how the fuck did they do that?
You do look at it, because you do go, it's Vietnam. This is fucking Vietnam.
It is totally. It just felt like this hot tropical kind of place. And then, of course, when you go out further again into this ruined city that they're trying to find the sniper with, again, the atmosphere, the colour, temperature, everything changes again as well. And it's just, you know, it's done startling.
Yeah, like, I mean, the cinematography is good in Platoon, but at the same point, it's a bit muddy. Like, we were looking at, it was 4K versions of them, and like Full Metal Jacket is stunning still. The Platoon transfer didn't really work as well. I think it looked a bit more pixelated. I don't know, there was something off with it, but I think that maybe the transfer with it, which is really weird that it's like an Academy Award when it won like all those Oscars, and they wouldn't do a better fucking job fucking putting it, upscaling it. So yeah, cinematography, Full Metal Jacket.
Jesus, it's really pulling ahead now at this stage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already.
Yeah, it's. I think Full Metal Jacket's going, but we'll go through the rest quick. But like the editing,
pace and effects. Again, I think Full Metal Jacket is actually a slower build, I think. Platoon, if you go for the pace and the effects, there's probably more special effects. It's faster pace and everything. So I'd nearly give it to Platoon on this one, to be honest with you.
I don't know if I would. Like, when you think about the pacing of it, the pacing, I think, even though it's slower with Full Metal, you even said it yourself, you got bored looking at Platoon.
That's true, I suppose.
Like, Full Metal Jacket does not feel like 2 hours.
No, it does not.
It does. Like, if you looked at it, and we looked at them in separate nights, but it was like back-to-back nights. Platoon fucking drags.
It does a bit, actually. Yeah, you're right, I suppose.
Like, I'm surprised with it, because I've very fond memories looking at Platoon. I always thought, but like, looking at it, I was just like, Jesus Christ, it's really fucking dragging. Like, it felt really badly edited in spots with it. And like, I mean, there's the lulls in it. There's too many lulls, I think.
Yeah, it does. It's almost like a DJ keeps playing slow songs in the middle of a fucking banging set. Because, you know, sort of when they get injured and they're going back and they're recuperating and all of that, it just kind of, it stops you and slows you and takes you out of the film.
It doesn't suit the film. It's just, you know, or it doesn't serve the film. I should say it doesn't serve the story a lot, where it's like, oh, they go back to and then it doesn't really show them bonding. It just kind of jumps forward after Elias gets killed, where they're all there. Oh, we had great times. It has that like one shot where it tracks of my tears. Yeah, where they're all there getting high, but it's like, that's it. It doesn't show why they're like brothers. Whereas fucking in Full Metal Jacket, you had like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. nearly half of a normal film of
just
them training, and you kind of go, geez, they all went through that, so you can see why they all get
they
on.
would have that bond of brothers, like such.
They all have that trauma, that shared trauma, and then when they get out there, they have the shared trauma as well. Whereas in Platoon, they're all more disjointed. I know that's probably the whole point of Platoon. It's meant to be about like the conflict between them all, but I think Full Metal Jacket is edited better.
You persuaded me. Go on then.
So look, we won't. Full Metal Jacket wins.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll go through, I suppose, the rest of the categories.
Soundtrack. I think I'd give it to Platoon actually on the soundtrack.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, Full Metal Jacket, I do think, obviously you have the sort of the kind of the upbeat kind of like, the music of the era and all the rest, but towards the end you have this, it's really creepy sort of like droning kind of soundtrack, and it's so unsettling.
Actually I think you're right. I think probably Full Metal Jacket probably wins it on the soundtrack.
Just for the sound design in general, I think it is. It's very, very unsettling, but it can switch between that and here's what was playing on the radio at the stage.
I suppose it catches that where there's that guy that when he shoots when we're there in the tank and there's like Viet Cong guys run from one building to another and he shoots two and he looks like a child all happy after shooting them, and then it starts playing the I Want Everybody or the bad
that's true actually.
Where it goes where it's just that I think it's trying to capture that fucking not insanity, but that thing where it's like they're after being trained that this is like a good thing to get, or they're kind of like, oh yeah, well, but it's that child, like, because they're all kids, like a lot of these guys, like, they would have been 17 or 18, like going to war.
That's it, obviously, as well, before video games of this nature. They probably would be like winning at a shooting gallery at a fair or something. Oh, I shot the duck, like, what do I win?
I can't remember what the documentary was, but I'm sure it's widely known now that a lot of guys that were out, like I've had friends that were out in Afghanistan, and they were talking about playing Call of Duty, and I won't get into things too much, probably shouldn't talk about it too much, but it's just that there is that thing where it's like you're dealing with young men.
Yeah. They haven't fully developed their empathy. Like no one before they're 20 fully develops their cause and sort of effect and empathy kind of centres, I suppose, really. It's not... You don't think of death as being death, and you don't think of other people as being their own characters with their own agency and their own families, and like, well, if I kill this man, what about his wife, what about his kids, what about his brothers, sisters, mothers?
I don't think Platoon handles that very well at all. Like in Platoon, it's just when they get to the village and it's like the villagers that they start killing, where it's like, oh, these soldiers are killing innocent people. Where in Full Metal Jacket you have this thing for most of the film, it's like they're shooting people from afar and killing them from afar, and then it's at the end when Joker's confronted with someone face to face, and that's what they're hard to do, and it makes them realise like, oh, this is a person just like us.
And again, the usual twist of, oh well, it's not your typical sort of like young male, it's like it's a young woman. That's obviously, if a woman is picking up a gun and trying to defend her village or whatever, like it's like, oh, Jane.
But like Full Metal Jacket, I think to its credit, doesn't even try and raise those questions. It kind of just focuses on people. As opposed to, like, it's quite obviously I think an anti-war movie, but I think you can look at it and kind of go, oh well, because it doesn't judge with it. But I'd go with you. I'd give it to Full Metal Jacket. I wasn't going to give it to Platoon because I had the Platoon soundtrack when I was younger.
But I think just from sound design in general, sort of with the quieter, more sinister moments, I think it handles that very well. You know? And of course Mickey Mouse at the end. Who doesn't love that? With
the directing, I think Stanley Kubrick, like looking at like it's well directed Platoon, but when looking back on it, there was a lot of real, I don't know, you can, like, Stanley Kubrick would be a master at that stage. Oliver Stone was just kind of getting started. So I think that it's a bit of a fucking hard one to put, compare like.
But that's the thing, I actually will kind of split it between the two, because I do think, like, I mean, the vision and the execution, I think Oliver Stone is doing pretty damn well for being.
Oh God, yeah. As well, I suppose the whole thing with Platoon, it was more of a different kind of movie at the time as well.
Yeah.
With it, although there was films that dealt with people coming back from Vietnam, but not with and portraying like soldiers as the bad guys to a certain degree. So fuck it, we'll give it to Platoon. Give it to Platoon.
I was going to split it and give it to both, but
it's I think both maybe, because like it's just when you do look at it, and I think with Kubrick's thing with Full Metal Jacket, it requires a couple of watches because you need to, I think, first watch, just absorb the story and the characters, and you'll just focus on the surface stuff. Then the second time you can kind of settle back and kind of go, wow, and then like you kind of go, oh fucking wow.
Wow.
But the it factor, one of a kind and transcendent, and like quite obviously, I'm going to give it to Full Metal Jacket. Okay,
I'm going to split it again because I do think.
Well, you can't, because if it's one of a kind, how can you give it to two?
They're each one of their own kind.
But no, you have to pick between one.
Okay, but if I'm going to pick one, as in the it factor for me would be Full Metal Jacket. I do think Platoon is a fantastic film. I do think it was transcendent over other films at the time. I think it blazed a trail. But if just going on personal preference, I think I would think Full Metal Jacket.
I think it's well standing the test of time.
It doesn't. You don't often get films that portray suicide either, as well. You know, in that
definitely
kind of
not
manner.
now, and especially because people just seem to have this whole thing about where they don't even want to say suicide because like the
or
algorithm
might trigger
might fail,
people or something.
where it's like fucking like, I mean, this is the whole thing about suicide. People spent a long time to get to the point where you could openly talk about suicide to try and not make it a taboo subject. And now it's been made a taboo subject again because of a fucking algorithm and people not wanting to talk about it, you know?
That's it. And it is ridiculous because like that's why people end up, you know, suffering in silence because I can't talk about this to anyone. There's a stigma to it. And it's like, no, take the stigma away.
Or it's like, oh, maybe other people don't feel like the way that I do. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I can't talk about it. And it's like, no, fucking, you need to kind of like destigmatise things.
That's it,
whereas it's I just think fucking Full Metal Jacket just has an awful lot going for it, and as well it's like Platoon. I think when I was younger looking at it, Platoon would have been my favourite out of the two. Probably because I was too young to kind of grasp fully.
I know we all did.
Full
the nuances, I suppose.
Yeah, whereas now looking at its Full Metal Jacket is just it's and it holds up an awful lot better.
Absolutely.
35 years later, Jesus.
I know, it's kind of terrible. And as well, I mean, you get the whole thing of like sort of when I was younger, I wouldn't have understood what the fuck is a Full Metal Jacket, and even when he said it. I had, and there's no intro at the time to go and look it up, but it's sort of like, it's like when the name of a song is said in the song, you're like, oh, I said the thing, it's Full Metal Jacket, oh, I get it now, yeah.
And as well, he just called it that because he saw it in a magazine, he thought it sounded cool. You know, this is the thing where people go on about Kubrick, that I think sometimes people have a tendency to overanalyze things, where sometimes it is just like the rule of cool. With some of these, and as well, like the directors are visual people, so you know it's going to be
cool. That's good. But I do think Platoon unfortunately has suffered a bit in the comparisons. Full Metal Jacket wins out, but again,
wins 8-2.
Not to say that Platoon, if it was put up, that's the thing, if it was put up against another war film, Platoon would probably win.
Yeah, it would. It's like, I think something like, although I haven't seen it in a long time, Hamburger Hill. And like, I mean, there's an awful lot of bad movies out there. There was one which ripped off, although I think it was based on a true story, or it said claimed that it was based on a true story as well. Casualties of War with Michael J. Fox in it.
All right.
I'm fairly sure it's a true story, and it dealt with. I think they were transporting a female prisoner and she gets sexually assaulted by people in a platoon, or they're trying to, or I can't remember the exact kind of thing with it, but that was like seeing, you know, look at exploring the same stuff as Platoon with it. But yeah, Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, Full Metal Jacket. Yeah. There you go.
There you go, yeah. And if for some reason you've listened to this podcast and you haven't
not seen either, go and watch both films.
But Full Metal Jacket as well, rewatching it this time around for me made me appreciate Stanley Kubrick a lot more. It was the same, we did The Shining at one point in another podcast, and I always used to hate the fucking Shining.
Yeah, and but then when you sit down you kind of go, oh, Jesus,
I was like, fucking hell,
ticks all the boxes here.
It mightn't be as good a story as it could have been with things, but it's fucking stunning film. But yeah, so that's this week. Full Metal Jacket is the winner. If you disagree, let us know why.
Yeah.
Don't just say, oh, you're wrong.
Yeah, tell us why we're wrong.
Tell us why we're wrong. Yeah, insult us like Orly Ermy. Without racial slurs.
Be verbose with it.
Yeah. But yeah, look, thanks for listening. I think next week we're going to have to do something a little bit lighter. We've had a couple of weeks of fairly
strong films. Yeah.
People quite obviously did not like the Carlitos Way episode either.
Oh really?
Yeah, that one performing very poorly. Not that we're doing it for metrics
for the
or
likes.
like that, but just seeing it kind of going where it's like people seem to really like the fucking Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah. Who doesn't like Maximum Overdrive?
Compared to other things. So I think we might do a more of a genre kind of thing. I think we might do a horror film next week.
Well, I mean, that's all we watch in general, so in fairness.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. So look, until next week, thanks for listening and we'll talk to you then.